Successful businesses tend to have effective leaders. They have learned to listen, build trust, offer respect, and connect with employees as people. Find out why to lead, you may have to take your heart to work. Next on Living Smart. Welcome to Living Smart, the show designed to help you get the most out of life. Laura Lopez climbed the corporate ladder in Coca-Cola for 20 years. She became their marketing vice president, led teams, launched products, and built advertising campaigns. But the most important lesson she learned from her experience was how to become a leader who engages both body and heart. As the author of The Connected and Committed Leader, Lessons from Home, Results at Work, Lopez found leadership skills are often counterintuitive to what we have been taught, especially as women. Lopez learned from her corporate experience and parenting that to lead effectively, you have to bring your heart to work. Welcome to Living Smart. It's great to have you.
Great to be here, Patty.
What are some of the basic, effective skills that we need to learn to be good leaders?
Well, the first one I would say is to be humble. And then the second, I would say, is about being receptive. I believe that some of the old models of leadership just don't work anymore, meaning the model of command and control.
Right.
You see, today we live in a world that is much more centered on having people be human, connected, because of the diversity in our workplace, the global nature of our workplace, and also the fact that many people are working virtually.
Right.
All of these factors, multi-generations in the workplace, all of these factors contribute to the fact that this old model doesn't work any longer.
Very good. How does a leader today motivate his employees, his or her employees?
Well, it fundamentally starts with taking the focus off of yourself. The best leaders know how to put the spotlight on their people. Now, my best mentor did this a lot, and he had this belief that all people want to do their best work. Mm-hmm. And this filtered into everything he did. And to me it was, you never had people disappointing him because he had this positive, affirmative approach to people in the workplace, and it went a long way.
Sometimes we'll learn more about what we're not supposed to do than what we are supposed to do. So what are some of the qualities of the worst leaders?
Well, certainly having a doubtful approach. I don't know about you, but doubt does not motivate me.
No. I don't know if you can do this. Oh, no.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, it doesn't work.
Doubt does not work. Also, arrogance. Leaders often tip the scales and become overly arrogant. Their egos get in the way. And so arrogance is a destroyer of motivation for many people.
What are some of the most important lessons you learned working for corporate America?
Well, the first lesson I really learned was that leadership is not a role. The reality is that no matter where you sit in the organization, you can be a leader. The second thing I learned was that too often we buy into this old model, this belief that you have to be commanding and controlling. And there's nothing further than the truth. In fact, most of the times I tell people that leadership is exactly the opposite of what most people think it is. And then the third thing that I really learned was that when we finally believe that we're in a leadership role, sometimes we think we've got to put on some persona, almost like stepping into some armor, almost like we're playing a character in a play. And that is the furthest that it's not going to lead to effectiveness because you have to be authentic. Right. And you've got to be connected to yourself and to the people around you.
You know, you wrote your book right after you had experienced being a mother. And motherhood taught you a lot about being a leader. How is that?
Well, I was the proverbial career woman. And I had climbed the ladder, and I was single. I didn't have a family. And at the ripe old age of 45, my husband and I decided we were going to adopt a baby. And it was the week before we were leaving to go to Russia. And a dear friend and colleague, his name is Mike, came up to me and he said, "You know, Laura, congratulations, you're going to be a mom. But I have to tell you, Laura, everything that's made you successful here and in your business, it's not going to work at home." I was dumbfounded by that comment. And at first I said, "Well, why, Mike?" But he didn't. He says, "Well, you'll see. You'll be the VP here and the mom at home."
Okay.
Well, for 2 months when I was gone and I was bonding with my child, I took leave to be with her. I really did not stop thinking about what Mike was talking about. And then it dawned on me. I had an epiphany, and I realized that what Mike was talking about was that management skills don't translate from home, to the office, to home rather. But in fact, leadership skills do in fact work as effectively at home as they do in business.
Okay.
And so it connected for me that this was leadership. Raising a child was the epitome of being a very effective leader.
Explain what that means.
Well, what that means to me is...
For example?
Well, for example, as a leader in business, you want your people to become independent contributors. You want them to be able to do the right thing when you're not there.
Right.
Well, parenting is very similar in that regard. And we want to grow leaders, we want to grow a child to be someone who's going to be self-sufficient and be successful in the world. And so it starts with all the very same steps that you would use in business. Mm. And to me, this is when the light went on, because I knew I wanted to be a great mother. And what Mike had said to me scared the heck out of me, because I thought...
You thought you were ready for both.
Well,
but
yes, exactly.
You learned from being a parent. Also, children tend to ask questions and talk back.
Well, yes.
Which an employee is not supposed to do, but if you have a great relationship with your boss, you're able to do that.
Yes, yes.
Let's talk about your challenge, because to become a leader, sometimes you have to face major challenges, and how you deal with those challenges make you even a better leader. So
absolutely.
In your case, what happened to you? What was your greatest career challenge?
One of my biggest career challenges is that I believe that I had tipped the scale of arrogance. I had a very successful business, was growing double digits, contributing significantly to the bottom line of the company. And I was, when we were going through a restructuring, I felt that I was really up for a major promotion. Well, unfortunately, I didn't get that promotion. And my colleague actually did. And his numbers were not as, his business wasn't as large, his business wasn't doing as well. And it was at that moment that I realized that my arrogance had gotten a whole new life, that leadership was more than just the numbers. And even when I felt very angry about that I didn't get this promotion, it wasn't until I took full accountability that I had a piece in that equation.
Right.
That I was able to then get over that anger and to move forward and to become a better leader. So I do speak a lot to people and coach people about keeping our egos in check and not tipping that scale of arrogance.
In fact, you were humbled.
I was humbled.
By being rejected. Rejection sometimes is a good thing.
Absolutely.
You say management and leadership is both sides of the same coin.
That's right.
Why is that? How is that?
Well, oftentimes people see these as very separate activities. People say, well, my job is about, the project timelines, getting the things done, and we those are heads-down activities. But leadership is a heads-up activity where you have to be seeing the future, you have to be inspiring others. But the reason I say they're two sides of the coin is you cannot do one without the other. I like to use the analogy, Patricia, of a car. If you think about a car, it has an engine, right? Mm. And a car needs gas to run. Gas is the management side of the equation.
Okay.
But leadership is the oil, okay? You can put a lot of gas in the car, and if you don't keep putting the oil in there, what's going to happen?
Right.
It burns up, right?
Right.
And that's what happens to organizations. Organizations that don't fuel their leadership, they burn out people, they burn out themselves, they freeze up, they can't move, because leadership is what I call the productivity lubricant.
Okay.
The productivity lubricant that the oil in an engine provides to a car.
Very good. General leadership principles have to be learned even before you lead teams or you're heading projects. Tell me about some of those principles we should learn before we even get to a major leadership role.
Well, as I said earlier, leadership happens in all directions and in whatever organizational role that you fill. So even if you don't have people, that is the time to start building relationships, building trust, being the go-to person that people have, that your word stands for something.
Right.
When you start to say, well, I can handle that and I can deliver, so that you're able to see through.
Right.
See
Yeah,
through
you are your word, right?
Exactly.
I mean, that's extremely important in life in general.
Right.
In your book, you share 7 insights, and I think when we go through this, we'll learn even more about what you're talking about. The first one you have here is believe and let go. What do you mean? Believe your employees that they're going to do it, right? And let them go. I'm assuming that's.
Well, it is, but it was really an insight that came to me again through parenting. I had a friend that said to me, Laura, parenting is the never-ending process of letting go. And I said, Tom, she's 2 years old. How can I start letting go now? And he said, no, you have to start right now because they won't grow to reach their full potential.
Okay.
And it's the same thing with leadership. We have to start letting go. But many times as managers, what do?
We micromanage.
We step in. We overcompensate. We spend all this time hiring the best people, and then we micromanage them to death. Or we let them go before their time.
Before they're ready.
Mm-hmm. So it is a constant ebbing
Balance.
and flowing and balancing on making sure that the person is prepared to take that next step. But belief is important here, because you have to believe the upside.
That they're going to be able to do it.
That they're going to be able to step up.
Number 2, you have be curious and see everyone.
Well,
I like that one.
I do too. As human beings, this is not an easy thing because the world is a complex place, right? And from an early age, we start chunking up the world, digesting it into pieces, and making certain judgments because otherwise it would be hard to get around.
Right.
I mean, kids start this at a very early age. My daughter was 2. She thought everything with 4 legs was a dog. And so you could see this in action. Great leaders, though, realize that judgment is a natural bias thing, and they stop. They catch it. They catch it before it starts happening, so that they can maintain that openness of curiosity, which is so key to bringing out the best in all types of people around you.
Okay. Number 3, you have be receptive and yield.
Well, as I started earlier to say, receptivity is very important. The opposite of receptivity is what? Rigidity, right?
Right.
It's I like to think about Hurricane Ike that came here through Houston, because that morning when I woke up, every tree that I saw down was a very strong oak tree.
Oh, wow.
Whereas the palm tree survived.
Right.
And this is what I mean by receptivity. Strength comes from flexibility. It allows the energy of other people to exist in the room. If you're too big and too rigid of a leader that comes into a room, there's not any room for anybody else.
That's very good. Be real and serve.
Being real is about being in other people's shoes. Oftentimes, as leaders, we get what I call the curse of knowledge. We lose connectivity with what we didn't know 5 years ago. I mean, as a parent, I couldn't believe it that, this being knew nothing.
Right.
You had to teach them everything. And leaders forget that what they didn't know. And so being in someone else's shoes and being real with them is meeting them where they are.
Okay. That's a very, very good point. Be humble and keep your ego in check. This is all throughout your ideas on leadership.
It is, yeah. Humility is really core and center here. And again, I spoke about my own personal experience with that and tipping the scale of arrogance. This is a fine line. We grow up in a society where we have to toot our horn. We grow up in a society where we compete to be the best. But confidence and humble confidence is very important as opposed to arrogance. Once you believe you're better than anybody or you've gotten to a place and you can't stand side by side with the people around you, then you know you may have tipped the scales.
Right. Be consistent and clear.
Well, being consistent and clear is about how do you communicate. Are you saying what you say and doing what you say? It's walking the talk.
Right.
But it's more than that. It's also about the integrity that you have to consistently communicate that, what you stand for.
Right, right.
I was tested on this, believe me, Patricia. And I do believe that this is where leaders fail more frequently than ever. Because sometimes in our best intentions, we commit to things without knowing our own limitations. And it's our own limitations that trip us up on the consistency equation. So, and this is where trust is built.
Right.
And trust, we know, is fundamental to leadership.
Right.
And, it takes us many years to develop it, and it takes us one mistake.
One mistake to stop that trust. Be vulnerable and give of yourself.
Well, this is really not about a bleeding heart. This is really about being open and vulnerable and allowing people to see you as a human being.
Okay.
So that you can learn. You need to learn. You need to grow. You have a development plan. And being able to share that with people. At the end of the day, people follow human beings, not scripted robots.
I like that. Okay. I like that.
Yeah.
Who do you admire as a great leader?
Well, I always think about Mother Teresa or like Gandhi. These are people that lead without authority. That is the true test of a great leader. If you have to stand behind your title, if you have to carry a big stick, you're not leading. It's the people that are able to guide and influence without resorting to the command and control ways that really differentiate a leader. And this is true for parenting as well.
It's true in anything, actually. You said that leadership is a lot like branding, and this is your specialty. So tell me what you mean by that.
Well, as you know, Patricia, I grew up in the marketing arena. And
Right.
so, yes, branding has been my functional expertise. Branding, as consumers, when you think about branding, we select brands because we have an emotional connection.
Right.
It is not an intellectual process.
No.
And leadership is the same way. We create followers, just like brands create consumers. We create followers by having emotional connections with people. And it's not just about the numbers. It is about that connection.
What are the greatest obstacles, though, for leaders today in the global world that we live in?
Well, I believe, number one, that we are entering a period of the free agent. Much like the digital space is changing the shape of marketing, it's also changing the shape of leadership. Because people have more voice. They have more voice in through blogging, through the digital world.
Right.
And so leaders are going to have to learn to let go more, to allow the space for personal expression, for flexible scheduling, for the ability for people to want to choose to work there.
What are some of the things someone can do or we can do to become better leaders?
Well, I think the first thing that one can do is to get honest and frank feedback.
From others?
From other people.
Okay.
Yes. Because
about how you're doing. And
right. Well, and it's more than that. It's what is the impact that you have on them? And you have to listen to that feedback with open ears. Because oftentimes, we want to dismiss other people's reality as, well, they're wrong. But their reality is correct.
Right.
That is how you are impacting them. So it's really about getting honest and open feedback and remaining open yourself to accept it and to be willing to move forward
and
in
analyzing what roles you play
exactly.
in that relationship. Let's talk about some of the life lessons that you've learned from being a mother about leadership. And you
right.
shared a little bit of that, but give me some more examples because that's kind of fun.
It is fun. Well, obviously, every mother knows, especially with younger children, there are things, how do you get them to do their homework? How do you get them to, get to bed? One of the simplest things. And you can't be screaming at them all the time. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's absurd. And so I have found that the more power that I actually give my child, she's now 6, mm-hmm. the more she listens to me. And I think oftentimes that parents actually strip power away from their children, and then are forever fighting them because they're trying to gain some power back.
Right.
And it's the same thing with associates that you're leading. We have to empower other people. We have to provide them ways that they can win, ways that we can make them feel good about themselves. So even as a parent, I mean, when my daughter's doing things that I don't want to do, I try to focus on the things she's doing right.
Okay.
And I start giving her more positive affirmations on those things. And then it starts to course correct the things that she's not doing. So I'm not a raving lunatic.
Right. No. I think it's a very good point that you're focusing on the positive, and
mm-hmm.
that's whether with your child or with your coworkers or your boss.
Absolutely.
If you try to lead your life that way, it's going to be a lot easier anyway, right? You always talk about bringing your heart to work. Mm-hmm. Now I make assumptions about that. As being more, I guess, more nourishing, more loving, more compassionate. What do you mean when you say bring your heart to work?
It's really about bringing your whole self. Mm. It's, oftentimes in business we think that we've got to protect ourselves. And this is one where I would say, women in particular have some of these challenges. That we have to be a certain way in order for us to be successful. And what we end up checking out the corporate door, so to speak, is a very fundamental part of ourselves, which is where creativity lives, which is where being able to inspire other people live. And it is the proverbial heart. And I'm not saying it's about, kumbaya. But it is about being real and being a full, holistic individual.
Right. Now, if we're to sum up the 3 main things to remember about leadership skills, bring your heart to work and mm-hmm. and being a more really holistic, I would say,
right.
leader, what would those be?
Well, I would have to start with humility. And
with what?
With humility.
Okay.
As we be humble. As you progress in more, levels of power, remember your humility. And secondly, I would say it's about respect. Respect the people that you're working with and when you're working for. Because fundamentally, that's, you're never above anybody.
Right.
And
everybody has strengths.
And everybody
and
has strengths,
and
absolutely.
Whether you're a leader or not, whether you're a manager or not.
But I tell people those insights also work with spouses.
Very good. I think all your lessons actually work
yes.
for everyday life.
Yes.
So how do you know that you're living smart?
Well, number one, I know that I'm living smart when I show up in my most positive way, where my strengths are working for me, when I'm creative and I'm insightful and I can inspire other people. And how I get there is that I have to keep all those aspects of myself nourished. And what I mean by that is I'm not just working, I'm not just, tending to the family, I'm also doing things for me. I'm expressing my creative side. I'm keeping fit and exercising. All those things are important to me. And I think it's really understanding where your priorities are and nourishing every aspect of those things.
What's the easiest thing for you to do of all of those?
I think working. There's a reason
you still
why
like
I was
working?
Well, I'm a workhorse. And I mean, some people say, how could you work at home? How could you be so disciplined? I'm like, sometimes I need to put in the fun, or I got to take a break, or, because I've always been a workhorse.
Thank you so much, Laura Lopez. Thank you for being a workhorse and sharing all that with us. And to learn more about becoming a connected and committed leader, go to our website. There you'll find a complete resource list. You can also email us or call us with your comments at 713-743-8513. And that's our show for today. I hope you've enjoyed it. Remember to live smart. I'm Patricia Gras. Have a great week.
For a transcript of this program, send $6.95 to the address on your screen. Please include the name of the guest.